It's Mon Mothma's Holonet, and we're just posting on it. Welcome back to Mothmanet News and our 50-day countdown to Andor Season 2. It feels very long, but we're also rapidly approaching it. I live in fear. Perpetually. Today's guest, can you please introduce yourself and our topic for today?
Yes, my name is Claire. I use they, them pronouns, and you can find me on TikTok and Twitter at cmaylewis. And we are talking about the Aldhani Arc today, which is my favorite Andor Season 1 arc, so I am very, very excited.
Excellent taste. It's such a good arc.
It's so good. Like, I remember the first time watching it and I was like, oh, this is real television.
I was pulled in to it's also the first arc that we see Mon Mothma, so naturally I'm biased. And I love all of the ways that they introduced so many new characters, like, in the fourth episode. And that's not even just, like, new and original characters, like, you know, the Aldhani Rebels and Dedra, but also, like, reintroducing characters like Mon as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, yeah, this arc is literally so good. And yeah, it is, like, I think, like, it's my favorite for so many reasons. I just think, like, the story itself is very interesting, and, like, the planet of Aldhani is such an interesting setting, which I do think is, like, a strength of Andor in general, being, like, the new planets they've introduced being these, like, totally fleshed out worlds, I think is, like, one of the things that I really, really love about the series. But I think the Aldhani arc in particular does such a good job with that. And yeah, with the characters, like, even though some of them don't even make it out of this arc alive, but, like, they're all so good. I'm like, this, like, half my favorite characters in the series came from this arc, even though they're only even in it for, like, 3 episodes.
So real. So real. I feel like every single Andor fan loves Nemec, and if they don't,
I know.
What is wrong with them?
He's like, literally my best friend.
I love him. I just,
It was crazy too, because, like, watching this arc for the first time, I was like, oh, I've never seen a character who's, like, more clearly going to die than him. Yeah. And yet I was like, wait, that's literally my best friend and nothing bad can happen to him ever.
Yeah. I can't remember who I said this with, but I was like, isn't it really on the nose that the little communist boy dies because he gets crushed by a fucking rack of credits? I was
know, and it's
like,
such a,
what the fuck?
It's such a just, like, almost, like, little thing. Like, it's not like he dies, like, he's, like, on the front lines or anything. Like, he literally just it's, like, the worst, like, twist of luck that results in his death. And I'm like, oh, he literally, like, bought into the rebellion more than probably anyone else that we see, and, like, died in this, like, almost, like, totally random, like, cruel twist of fate way. And I was like, oh, that's, like, so much worse than if he died, like, in some big heroic sacrifice or something. Like, he doesn't even know that.
Yeah, like, if he had died in the firefight, I would be like, okay, all right.
Exactly, because, like, he would sacrifice himself for the cause, but instead he just gets, like, hit and dies.
The dumbest death in Andor.
Yeah.
Like, I hate when a character has a dumb death, because I'm like, that's all I'm gonna think about is how dumb your death is now.
I know, and I'm like, he was just standing in, like, the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, that was literally it. And I was just like, God, if he had, like, so many little things had gone differently, he wouldn't have died. And I think about that a lot.
Yeah, because, like, it was, like, he was, I think, the heart of the Aldhani Rebels. Because he was just the little guy, and he, like, his impact definitely was felt by everyone. Like, he was the one, to me, that kind of was almost able to prove that Skeen had something of a heart. Yeah. Because otherwise I would have just completely written Skeen off, but he kind of gave me that hope of, like, oh, there's more to this guy. And, well, now, sweet baby Nemec, we'll never know. Because you're both, like, the rest of them.
No, and, like, the rest of them literally could not help but love and care about Nemec. And
Yeah.
even when they thought, like, some of them thought he was too idealistic or too naive or like any of those things, but they still all like realized that he was like a true believer in the cause and like cared about it for that reason.
Yeah. Like, also, like, I don't even know. Like, Cinta does not know. Like, she was not told on screen that Nemec is gone, or that like Gorn and Terriman and Skeen are all gone. Like, did Vel tell her these things, or has she just kind of been like, we're kind of going through it, and now's not the time for that conversation?
And like, the way they like paint Cinta as like everyone's perception of her in this arc is that she's so like cold and ruthless, and of course we like learn more about her and get like more nuance to her character than that. But even she is like, oh, but even when you do have that perception of her, you know that Nemec is kind of the person that she probably had a soft spot for. And God, no, it's so bad. Like I'm thinking about him always.
Yeah. It's sweet. And then when they had Alex Lothar also do the monologue for the like over the last
episode. Like I can't watch that without crying.
I was like, it's like he's still here with us.
It's like quickest way to like instantly bring me to tears was when that voiceover started. And I was like, oh.
I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not prepared for this. Yeah. And I just think that just the way that this arc is structured, because it's like the first arc is very, very important for setting the stage, but this is the arc where I think they increase the stakes even further. Yeah. Right. Because every like naturally, like it's all cause and effect. Like, you know, Cassian killed Corpos on Morlana, won, and then went back home. All of the stuff happened on Ferrix, and then he leaves Ferrix, and shit's still going down on Ferrix, and we still see like, you know, the way that his actions are still having an impact there. But now we also have all of these other places, and the fact that, you know, what he does on Aldhani ultimately ends him, like causes him to end up on Narkina 5 by the end of it, which just has all of this other snowball effect. I'm like, this is really like the Aldhani arc is that girl.
No, and this arc also I think starts to shape like how like Cassian learning what the rebellion actually is and learning what it like actually means to be a part of something like that. And like even though by the end he's not like totally bought in and he still is like doing his whole like I'm not a team player thing, which is just so, because when you think about him in Rogue One, you're like, and now he's literally like the biggest possible advocate for like working with a team, but whatever. I'm fine and chill about him, but it's like this is where he starts to like really realize what that means and realize that there's more to it than just like looking out for yourself. And even if it's not like he's totally bought in by the end, we do start to see like the things that like Nemec says to him and the things that Val says to him are like actually like impacting his perception of what a rebellion is. And like going forward, you can see that this is sort of where it all started for him in terms of like being a believer in this cause.
Yeah. Because like, this was the first time where I was like, oh, I'm beginning to kind of see how he ends up as this guy that we know from Rogue One.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just mind-blowing. And then it's the first time that we see Coruscant as well in this arc. We get to see Mon.
So true.
And like, you know, throwing, like adding, this one also adds like a lot more layers to Luthen as a character, because before he was just like the buyer. And it was like, okay, he probably like has some rebel ties, but then you're like, oh shit, like this guy actually is doing a lot of work for this like rebellion and the rebel network, and he has all of these different like pieces that he's moving on this board, and wow, that's a lot of pressure on one person.
Yeah. No, Luthen is such a good character, and obviously, like, in some of the later episodes, he has, like, we really get into, like, what it actually means and, like, what he's... Because I think a lot of the series is also about, like, what the various people have had to, like, sacrifice for the cause and for the rebellion, and obviously that's, like, a huge part of his character is that he's had to sacrifice, like, his own humanity. But I also think, like, this is... for Cassian, this arc is when he like realizes the sacrifices that other people have made, both like willingly and against their own will, and like things that people have lost that were like totally out of their control. But also that like there are people like who are in it for revenge, for like purely selfish revenge, and there are people who are in it because they like actually see a better future, and it's not just like something fueled entirely by anger. And I think it's interesting about like taking a group of rebels who are like all new characters that we've never seen before and like sort of giving them, they each are like in it for a different reason or came to be a part of this for in a different way. And I think it's super interesting, like then putting all those people on a team together and seeing where they're like various interests and investments like do or do not line up.
Yeah, which also kind of feels very similar to like the team that Cassian has in Rogue One as well.
Yeah.
You know, because they all are coming from these different places, joining this group for their own reasons, and, you know, being able to pull something really freaking massive that is a slap in the face to the Empire off. So, yeah.
So good.
I shout out to the planet of Aldhani because it's beautiful, it's stunning, it's breathtaking. It is the Scottish Highlands, and that it already has like all of that beauty, and then you throw the eye into it, and it
like that was some of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen on screen. Like it was, I was like, it like took my breath away the first time I watched it, and it's so like it gets talked about so much in advance, like as being like the most beautiful thing you'll ever see and like the most stunning display you'll ever lay your eyes on. And so they like, it's one of those things where it's like you could have hyped that up so much and then done nothing with it, but they like hype it up, and then when they actually show it, you're like, oh wow, even like watching this on a screen is like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
Yeah, and like it was one of those things where I was like, yeah, it was hyped up by the characters in the show, but even still the hype didn't do it justice.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh sure, like it's gonna be like really, really pretty and all of that. And I was like, it was nearly 4 a.m., right? Because it was like the close to the end of the episode. And you know, so I think in a place where episodes were dropping at 3 a.m. which I'm pretty sure you could relate to because we're all like same time zone.
Yeah.
But I'm like on my last legs and I see that and I'm like, holy shit, I cannot wait to rewatch this. And every single time I see it, like every single rewatch, I'm like,
yeah, the Aldhani arc and like that episode in particular are like the arc of Andor that I could rewatch like 1,000 times and never get tired of it. Like, and I could watch the entire first season over and over again, but like specifically this arc is like, I will literally never get sick of it.
Yeah, that's me and episode 7. Yeah, like I could watch this on repeat for days, and there was a whole week where I rewatched it every single day because I had a problem. And his name is Colma.
So true.
But yeah, and it's just so wonderful. And I love the way that so many people were like, this Aldhani rebel means everything to me. And like for a lot of people, like it was Nemec, which was so real of everyone. But then like you just had like the little pockets of I mean, nobody was gonna pick Skeen. Sorry, Skeen. Right. But like Vel and Cinta had people writing for them as a couple for weeks. And it was just so great to see, because it's like, yeah, the first 3 episodes, you know, the new characters had like fans come out, but the way that the Aldhani arc was just everybody had their little rebel Blorbo.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, this is my little guy. We know that they're probably going to die, but I'm gonna hold on to
No, and that was
hold on to
literally
them.
that was me with Vel watching this arc, and when she actually like made it out alive, I was like, oh my god, I've remained safe.
So real. And I love that we're getting, like, we got so much more Vel later down the road.
I'm obsessed with her.
I was like, there is something about this girl. And like from the very beginning, I was like, she's kind of giving like rich girl energy, but like that rich girl who's just like, yeah, I can totally like slum it and do all of this stuff. But in the back of my mind, like, I'm going to be like, okay, like this sucks, but I'm doing something good.
Yeah.
So it's manageable. And, you know, kind of trying to hide that from the people that she's with, because then it's just like, oh, like, why are you here? And it's just, it for me, she kind of shows that, like, yeah, even people who have a level of privilege also hate the Empire, which, given that she is Mom's cousin, we know that she's not the only one in her family who feels this way.
No, right? Exactly. Being that, like, people of that status and like of that privilege can also be oppressed and victimized by the Empire is like, well, yes. And I like that the show is like, yeah, it's like they are also suffering at the hands of the Empire, and it's just that some people are like so blissfully unaware and ignorant in their privilege that they like can't even see it. But then of course you have people like Bell and Mon Mothma who are like very aware of how it is consequential for them, as well as like the sort of everyday people of the galaxy.
Yeah, because like, and I like that Andor's also like using this as a way to be like, you do need, like, it's not necessarily like us versus them is not about like this person has like some more privilege than me, but they're also hurting, but I'm not like them, so they're the enemy. No, it's who is actually like causing this harm and doing this damage, because that is the them. And you need as many people who are being negatively impacted by this as part of your cause in order for it to go anywhere. You do need the people who can throw 100,000 credits a month at this rebellion so that they can fund what you are doing. So that they can make sure that, you know, while you're doing things like this heist, you have the ability to acquire some resources. And because in this case, Cassian is a resource. And we know essentially where that money was going to come from, right? It was going to come from the money that they were stealing, which was coming because the Empire was trying to shut down what Mon Mothma was doing, right? Yeah. So, you know, it's like, yeah, if the rich people who are being negatively impacted can realize like, oh, it's because of these policies, these things that are happening, that's good for you. Because if they're able to see that, they have oftentimes more power to do something about it than we do, which sucks, but that's how the world works, unfortunately.
Yeah, this whole series honestly is very good about getting into sort of like the nitty-gritty. And I think like Rebels does this a bit too, but obviously it's like for a different audience, like of what it actually takes to get a rebellion off the ground, like that it didn't just come from nothing, and it didn't just magically happen, or that it wasn't just like one person decided that we should do this and everyone like rallied behind it. It is like really getting into like how things like we need like money for something like this, like we need funding, we need people at like on the inside and on the outside, like all these things that like on a practical level, they like could not have created such a large movement without, and that it's also not just like this overly romanticized look at a rebellion and like, oh, everyone just like banded together and defeated the Empire. And this series is like, yeah, no, that's not at all how that actually works. And like, even within the Star Wars universe, that's like not how the rebellion came to be.
Yeah. And like, you know, in talking about Rebels, there was like there was a lot of storylines in the first few seasons that it was just like, oh, this episode is about resource acquisition because they need fuel, they need food, they need to do this in order to literally survive.
Yeah.
And, you know, Rebels also kind of a little bit was able to be like, hey, there are different kinds of rebels. There's different things that people are focused on based off of, you know, their own resources, their own like communities, etc., right? Because we have like the Free Ryloth movement, we have, you know, the like grassroots stuff on Lothal, we have the Ghost Crew, which is mostly in the Outer Rim. They throw Leia in there occasionally and Bail. They interact with like Saw Gerrera, who has like his own things, and I feel like Andor also does that really well and is like, hey, not everyone who's a rebel is, you know, picking up a blaster and going to shoot people. They'll do that if that's what they have to do in the moment, but your like rebellion, the cause, what you're working for, also needs people like Nemik, people who are thinking, right? It needs people who, as you said, like people on the inside, like Gorn, Terriman, even though Terriman had left the Empire. You need people like Mon Mothma. You need people who, you know, can get that money from rich people like Luthen with his shop. You need to have people like Cassian. There is a role of, you know, paid mercenaries in rebel movements, right? And oftentimes you can turn those people into, you know, non-paid like militants as well further down the line once they've spent enough time and been like, wait a minute, like I actually agree with what you're doing here, you know, which is what I think we're going to see with an evolution in Cassian's character in season 2, you know.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, Rebels does this too, where it's like, okay, we know that there are like all these various rebel cells, and like now we're seeing more of them in Andor, and we know of other existing ones from like Rebels and from different novels and all of those things. But it sort of becomes a question of like, okay, we have these like individual people, we have smaller groups of people who are working, we have people on like different planets doing these different missions and so on. But then that's not the same thing as what we see in like A New Hope and in the original movies, where it's like we have like an actual movement and we're now like able to like be at war with the Empire and like fight the Empire head on. And it's sort of, yeah, like bridging that gap between like we have people who want to fight and we have people who are already fighting on a smaller scale. And so how do we like, now they're at the point where they're like, we need like large scale organizers and like the resources to bring these people together and get them to unite and get them to like work towards the common goal that they all have in like an organized way that is going to be able to make like large scale impact, as opposed to like just being a group of various cells here and there that are like making an impact on their own but like on a much smaller scale. And there's that sort of like step that happens between like season 1 of Andor and Rogue One of like organizing this into what we come to think of as like the Rebel Alliance.
Yeah, which is probably going to be a huge part in season 2.
Yeah.
And like, while the original trilogy does kind of touch a little bit on like the idea of, you know, oh, I'm doing this to get paid. We see that with Han in A New Hope. and Luke being like, well, I mean, you're just here for the money, like, whatever. And then Han ultimately is a hero in the Galactic Civil War, and the same thing we're going to see happen with Cassian as well, because Aldhani, he's like, yeah, I'm just here for the money, I'm being paid to do this job. And then he's going to Scarif in Rogue One to get the Death Star plans because he believes in what they're doing. And so I'm just really, really, really excited to see more character evolutions and more types of rebels as well in season 2. Because that, to me, is one of the most important things. Because you can't have an alliance that is just based off of people that are exactly like you. It's meant to be about different types of people who have the same goals and beliefs coming together to share their resources, their knowledge, and all of it that comes with that. And, kind of make it so that the people who have died for this cause, for their own their own little rebel self, to make sure that they didn't die in vain. And I'm like, that to me is super important, because if you drop the torch that Nemik and Skeen and Terriman and Gorn and all of these other characters, died to keep lit, that's when they truly die. Like the heart of Nemik is still beating. His manifesto is out there. It's with Cassian. And I really hope it comes up in season 2.
So true. More people need to be reading the Nemik manifesto.
So real. I'm manifesting that they give it to us as like a book.
Gosh, I would
be lined up waiting for that pre-order. Just
them releasing that as one of the sort of like in-universe books that they do, where they have done the like rebel journals and stuff, would be so good.
Yeah, because like we have the Jedi Path, we have like the Bounty Hunter Handbook, we have like the Rebel Files, the Imperial Handbook.
I'm like, where's the
and
Nemik
I have a few of them. I'm like, I need the Nemik manifesto. Give it to me, because I will.
People in the real world
need
to become radicalized by the Nemik manifesto.
Like real, and I think that we're at a place in our society, like just in general, where so many people are ready to be radicalized. They just need the right push and something to bring them into that. And I really hope that they get it, because it's been a rough road being a person, the past few years, who has already been radicalized, and seeing people like teeter on the edge of it. And I'm like, you're almost there. And I feel like we've reached that point, that so many people have fallen over that edge and are ready to stand up and fight. But I feel like a lot of people need guidance, because they're like, I don't have the resources to be able to necessarily like go out and protest or do this or do that. And I'm like, there are so many ways that you can do this. And that's one of the reasons I think this story is so important, is because it's like Star Wars is a multi-billion-dollar franchise. It's very, well known, it's accessible, and people want to be like their heroes that they see in fictional stories and embrace that. If you love Cassian Andor, think to yourself, like, what would Cassian Andor do? What would Karis Nemik do? And don't be held back, because if you're thinking it, so many people around you are thinking it as well.
Yeah.
Give them that courage.
It's also like, I mean, yeah, Star Wars obviously has always been about like taking down fascism and like the Empire and then the First Order, like all of these things. But Andor is just like, it's giving it like a nuance and a realism that I don't think any other Star Wars project has quite matched, which is like very interesting. And I'm like super interested because obviously like season 1 was very well received. People thought it was really good. And I'm very interested to see like how what the reception to season 2 looks like in terms of like, is it going to draw in more people and like what sort of like how is it going to hit differently now versus when season 1 was coming out? Like, I'm just like very interested and like very curious to see how it like will maintain its relevance while also realizing that like it's being released in now even a different like political climate than when the first season was coming out. And I think like, I mean, I think most people with like a brain realized what season 1 was about, but like for those that didn't, I'm like, oh, is anyone gonna like pick up what they couldn't grasp when they watch season 1 or like go back and revisit season 1 and have it kind of like click into place for them? And that is like my dream for season 2 of this show.
Like season 1, like the good thing about Andor, and I'm going to say like probably a lot of Star Wars shows, is that they are relatively short enough. Doing a full rewatch isn't that bad. The worst one I would say is Clone Wars, because that is like 7 seasons.
And you gotta watch 2 seasons of
so much
nonsense.
And like, you know, there are enjoyable episodes in those 2 seasons, but some of them I'm just like, why? But, you know, and like, sure, Rebels is like 4 seasons, but I got through Rebels incredibly quickly because I was just so pulled in. But, you know, Andor, first season only being like 12 episodes, there is more than enough time to rewatch it and like re-experience that and let it speak to you to prepare you for season 2. Because like, sure, it's less than 20 days away, but you know, you can do it. You can fully do it. Hey, if you're coming to Star Wars Celebration and you're like me, who has a 14-hour flight, you can watch the entirety of season 1 in that flight.
Just lock in and watch all of Andor. Like,
he's so locked in.
Andor is also one that I'm telling literally everyone to watch. Like, even people that are not big Star Wars fans, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, you have got to watch Andor. Because, I mean, obviously, like, we're Star Wars fans. We like it partially because it is Star Wars and because of how it, like, fits into the wider universe. But it's also, like, just a good show. And I don't think you need to be a Star Wars fan to see that. And so it is, like... Of course, when like a new season of Andor is coming out, I'm like, guys, like, have you watched Andor? Because you need to lock in right now.
You should watch Andor. It's like it's one of my favorite things to recommend, especially to people who are like, I don't know a lot about Star Wars. I'm like, perfect. You don't need to know that. And in that way, like, Andor is a lot more accessible than so much of Star Wars, right? Which is phenomenal because you don't need to have like all of this prior knowledge. And sure, there's a lot of entry points into Star Wars that's just like, oh, you don't really need to know this, but knowing these things is nice. Both Andor, it's just like it's a good story. Just watch it for the plot and let it speak to you.
Yeah, like you could literally watch like Andor Rogue One and be like, and get a full story without having to dive super deep into the rest of Star Wars. That's the beauty of it, because it's like, it's not necessarily like self-contained, but it does stand on its own in a way that lots of other things within a big franchise don't, you know? And there's real substance to it, and like every individual arc has its own thing to say about so many different things. And that is really special because, you know, I'm not necessarily like
I'm not defending Disney, I'm not throwing shade at them, but as a multi-billion-dollar corporation, a lot of things that they choose to make lack substance in a lot of ways. And that isn't me being like, oh, like I hate everything that they do. I think that there is validity in a lot of what they do because obviously it's making money. People want to watch these for a whole bunch of different reasons. But when it has that substance and it speaks to people on these deeply emotional and intellectual levels, that's where we hit like, you know, real art territory, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even really like using that phrase very much because I'm like, if you feel emotionally and intellectually connected to a Marvel movie, yeah, then 100% that is important and that is good. Like all art is good because it exists. And creative expression is a net good. But when we get to have those things that's just like this says something about the society that we live in, it just makes it gives it that bit of art that is an act of rebellion in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why fascist governments don't like to fund the arts. Because they're like, if these people are thinking, they're gonna get ideas.
Like, wait a minute, this is low-key about us. And I'm like, well, yes.
This fucking play about us. Yeah.
No, going back in this one, I cannot stop thinking about Nemec's line that's like, it's easier to hide behind 40 atrocities than a single incident, because I was like,
yeah.
Oh my, like,
okay.
It's one of those ones that I'm just like, dang, it hits even harder now than it did, like, 2 years ago when I was watching the first season of the show in so many ways. And I just like, it's one of those things that I'm like, it's almost too real. Like, I mean, like, obviously it's very real, but I was just like, oh.
Yeah, it's
much to think about.
It's that thing where it's just like, wow, this is really timely.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's not a good thing. I don't want stories about fascism and dictatorships and having to fight back against a government. I don't want those stories to be timely.
Andor being a story that is like comes on the tail end of like an era of Star Wars that is about like the rise of the Empire and like the rise of a fascist regime. And like some of my favorite like Star Wars books and like pieces of Star Wars media are like the things that take place in the years immediately following the Clone Wars, because it's when you see like how does a fascist regime like the Empire actually like take root, because it doesn't just like happen magically. And so Andor kind of falling in a part of that where it's like the Empire has taken control now, and now it's about a opposition and resistance that has existed since the earliest days of the Empire, but has not grown to its full potential yet, and will not reach its full potential for another like 5 years out from the beginning of Andor. And I think it is super interesting how they kind of like how this whole era of Star Wars takes you through not just like how they're toppling the Empire, but how the Empire like even was able to exist and expand as quickly as it did, and like take root as strong as it did.
And how it was able to hold on to power for so long. Because that is a huge question that so many people have with stories like Star Wars. Like, oh, well, how did, like, if so many people were opposed to the Empire, how was it able to maintain power for like 2 decades? Or they think that, you know, getting rid of a fascist government is going to be easy. And it's like any story that involves a dictatorship or a fascist government, it's only going to be overthrown, unfortunately, with violent action, because that's the only language that they understand. And it's going to take time because they have the power, they have the resources, they have the ruling class, they have everything. And you, as the individuals the little people at the bottom, the poorer you are and the richer they are. And there's a reason that when that divide gets even bigger, things get worse, because you don't have you will never be able to afford the resources that they have, which is why it's going to take you so much longer to fight back. Like, yes, Mon Mothma is a rich person. She is a rich individual. The planet of Alderaan is very wealthy, very well off. That is still no match for Palpatine being like, I can actually tax every single one of your planets at a rate that will harm your citizens, and there is nothing you can do to stop me. I can increase quotas on all of these things that I demand from your worlds, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because otherwise, I can send Star Destroyers, Stormtroopers, and all of that to kill you, because you are replaceable at the end of the day. You are a faceless automaton who just exists to work and meet my quotas. And that really does harm a populace. The more exploitable your workforce is, the worse off your society is. You know, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's very bleak. Andor, such a good show, but such a not fun show to watch.
The way, like, I love when it's just like, wow, this thing is really good and I enjoy watching it. But then I think about it and I'm like, I'm not having fun thinking about this, but I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna rewatch this again because it makes
I'm loving
me
this
think.
From an intellectual standpoint, but from like an emotional standpoint, I'm like, I'm really very sad. Like during every episode of Andor.
From a current events perspective, I'm like, this is brutally painful, and it's gonna be brutally painful. Like, I fear we're gonna have like Aldhani level death tolls every freaking week. And I'm like,
in the spirit of Rogue One, everyone is gonna die.
Everyone's gonna die. I'm like, there are very few characters, but I'm like, I have hopes that you will survive. And I'm looking at
watching Rogue One for the first time and being like, oh, so like everybody's gonna die. Cool. Love it. Love the energy.
I was like, I'm gonna watch Rogue One. I'm like, everyone's gonna die, so I'm not gonna get attached. Oops, I got attached.
And then I'm like, please, no! Stay safe!
And then I did the same thing with Andor. I was like, so many of these characters are gonna be marked for death. Do not grow attached to any of them. I was like, going into it, I was like, the only character I will allow myself to be attached to is Mon Mothma, because she survives this whole thing. And yet, here I am. Like, I still believe that Nemik is
That's like the thing with Cassian too, because you're like, yay, Cassian's not going to die in Andor, but also he does die immediately after, so everything he does is like even worse, because you're like, oh, he didn't even get to live long enough to see. That's what all these people, I'm like, they fought so hard and none of them get to see their own successes, and it's just like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, they have burned their futures for a sunrise they will never see.
God, I was about to say something about the Hunger Games. Anyway, we can't.
I realized that quote had sunrise in it, and I was like, hi, Suzanne Collins, did you watch Andor?
Oh my God, I was literally about to, like, we can't keep doing this.
No
I was
way.
like,
I just
more dove-coated anyway.
We're just crashing out over here. It's been a several week long crash out over the Hunger Games for both of us.
And continuing for a long time too.
Oh yeah, because I'm just, look, the price needs to be paid. A penance must be penanced. I don't know what the actual word for that would be, but this fandom is why are our fandoms just suffering constantly?
And literally I'm like, oh, you finished Sunrise on the Reaping, cool. Allow me to recommend Andor.
It's like you just finished reading a book where so many people fucking die. Are you ready for more death?
Literally.
It's like the opening number of Beetlejuice. God, I hope you're ready for a show about death.
I'm like, are you ready for
all my
same
favorite
story
things,
except in a different galaxy?
Yeah, it's rest in peace. Nemec, you would have really loved Plutarch Heavensby's library.
Nemec and Haymitch could have like queened out for real. Nemec and Lenore Dove could have like
oh my god
made it happen.
I'm never okay. I'm never okay. I need it. If I end up doing an Andor Hunger Games crossover, it's gonna be a problem.
Like, it's so real too, unfortunately.
Why has the media from 2025 that I have gobbled up like a crazy person, The Mask of Fear, Sunrise on the Reaping, what will inevitably happen with Andor, why is it all so timely?
No, like, it's so...
Why are they doing this to me?
Yeah, it's so bleak.
We're living in unprecedented times, but slightly precedented because we've read history books and we
literally
understand. It's not going to be a good time. But Andor season 2 will be well made.
Exactly. It'll be a good show, I believe.
Like, I have faith in Tony Gilroy.
Yeah.
And when he was like, I'll be very upset if you don't cry. I'm like, girl, I'm about to make you the happiest man on the planet. I'm like, I'm already crying. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You started that early.
I'm also like, it's rare for a new Star Wars series or like a new season of a Star Wars show to be coming out. And I'm like, my expectations are not in the trenches. Like, I actually am like, this is going to be good. Because usually when a Star Wars show comes out, I'm like, I expect this to be bad. And then if it's good, I'm like, oh, cool. But with this, I'm like, I actually have high hopes for this. Once.
I'm like, please. Yeah, that was also me with season 1. And I'm like, I don't think Tony Gilroy is going to disappoint us.
Literally, like, I actually have faith and trust in these writers for once.
Yeah. And like, this isn't meant to be shade towards any of the other like actors or whatever, but just the acting quality in Andor as well. Yeah, I'm like, get these bitches the Emmys.
It's like there is a genuine distinction between like good Star Wars writing and good writing, and Andor has like jumped into actual good writing. And like this is not like shade. Like there are some Star Wars shows that I absolutely love and I think are very good, but like it is still sometimes like, but this is a Star Wars show and they're falling victim to Star Wars tricks. And Andor, I'm like, no, this is just like a good show.
Yeah. It's just like, this is, in some ways, Andor feels too good to be Star Wars sometimes.
I know. Sometimes I like low-key forget, but it's also like the most central to like what Star Wars is supposed to be about.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just so phenomenal. Yeah. Do you think we're going to see Aldhani in season 2? I'm scared if we do.
I don't know, actually. I can't decide because it's like in season 1, they kind of like went from one location to the next. And so I'm interested to see if season 2 will do kind of the same thing where they kind of like move between locations and then establish some of the more like Yavin and the more like permanent locations. Or if they sort of like swing back and return to any of the places we saw in season 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like there are some places I'm like, maybe, but I don't, because like Because, like, I don't want to see Aldhani potentially become what it was referred to in Skeleton Crew as a sulfurous bog. I'm like, I don't need to see
I can't live
that.
that life.
I don't want to see my beautiful Aldhani like that, because we already know that the people of Aldhani are going through it post the eye, and so just having visual proof of that would break me in ways that are unacceptable. And am I not already going to be suffering enough?
Yeah, and like I don't think we need to see it. Like I think we can get it without having to have it like shoved in our faces.
Yeah. And that's
especially
one of the other things I like.
This.
Yeah. Like Andor's one of those few Star Wars, like it's like one of the only Star Wars shows that kind of expects a level of intelligence that we really only sometimes see in some of the books, where it's just like, you don't need to be shown this. We can just tell you, and you know that it's not good. You don't have to be like, look at how bad it is.
Yeah.
Right? Because it has surpassed that, you know, like gone from good Star Wars writing to just good writing.
Yeah.
And again, like, you know, yes, there are criticisms of Andor, as there should be for any art, but when the biggest quote unquote criticism from a certain group of people is about bricks and screws, I'm like, okay, so we're actually like, it's just I'll just occasionally have a day where I'm like, oh yes, Andor good, and then I remember, oh yeah, some people were mad about.
You're like, dang, we got like low-key the best Star Wars series ever, and people were like complaining about there being bricks, and I'm just like,
I'm like, but like the thing is, with Andor criticism, it also, there's a different quality to the way that a lot of people, when they have criticisms of Andor, are able to express it in an intellectual way, right? With like proper full sentences. And it's just like, oh, so this is a higher level than what we're used to, right? And that just makes the bad faith criticism even more ridiculous, because it's like, we're over here having an adult discussion and you're crying because you, like, I don't know what's going on, but you're behaving like a child. Go away, we're having an adult discussion over here. And that was also really refreshing as well, because I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to have an adult discussion in this fandom. For once.
Oh, like Andor actually requires, like, it's not subtle in like being about what it's about, but it also like does require you to engage with it with like some intellectual thought. Which we, as we know, some people in the Star Wars fandom are not capable of. But it was like, oh, I get to have like an actual like thought-provoking conversation about a Star Wars show where I don't want to like hit my head against a wall because of stupidity.
Like it's one of the ones where I feel a little bit more confident being able to talk about online, because I know I'm not going to attract a bunch of weirdos for the most part, and I don't just like quietly share my opinions with like close friends and my partner in the car, looking around like paranoid that somebody's gonna be like, so anyways, Rey Skywalker bat. I'm like, okay, just go away.
Like, anyway.
Because like I do feel that most Star Wars, like I have my criticisms of most things in Star Wars, but, and even Andor, even though it is my favorite show, but like I've always tried to be like, hey, so this is the reason that I'm criticizing this, and like, because I'm college educated and I wrote a shit ton of essays in college and I know how to form an argument and how to like critique and criticize media and have discussions around that. And I also and capable of listening to other viewpoints and being like, oh, okay, I understand your point of view, and that has impacted my point of view because I'm an adult. But other things in Star Wars, I'm like, hi, I enjoyed this, but this is my criticism. And then there will still be a swath of brain dead comments. And I'm like,
and you're like, please get out of here. I'm trying to like be a smart person.
I'm like, I am just a person trying to have an honest intellectual conversation. And here y'all come out of the woodwork like a bunch of weirdos.
That's also the thing. As soon as someone says they didn't like Andor, I'm like, I am immediately distrusting you.
Yeah.
Like, if you just flat out didn't like it, I'm suspicious of you. And I just kind of don't want to talk to you.
So real. Like, you know, again, yeah, criticizing media is important. And sure, it's not necessarily a story for everyone because everyone looks for different things. But if you're just like, I think Andor is bad, I'm like, you are not a person we're
I'm like, tell me why.
Yeah.
Like, just out of curiosity, what about it is bad to you? Because I'm a little scared and suspicious.
Yeah, I'm like, I need to know how red the flag is over here. Like, you know, and it's just, maybe it's one of those like things that I'm just overprotective of, but I'm like, this show means a lot to me because of the way that, in my opinion, some of the smartest people in this fandom, the way that they have taken it and been able to literally have like intellectual discussions and like talk about like history and politics and government structures. And I'm like, I'm not quite as smart as you, but
no, literally,
I can have an intellectual discussion.
I'm like, I'm listening. I'm loving what you're saying.
And I'm like listening, and I'm like taking notes, and I'm like, okay, all right, interact with this in a normal way. But also sometimes I'm just like, cook, bestie, you know?
Well, it's so, like, I recognize that, like, because like Rebels is my other favorite Star Wars show, and I recognize that if someone is like, I don't really like Rebels, I'll be like, okay, well, you're dumb and never speak to me again. And then I'm like, okay, no, that's not true. But with Andor, I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
That's different, though. Like, that's not just me being like, this is my show, I love it. I'm like, no, I actually think this is, like, good television and is, like, deeply relevant television and is very, like, thought-provoking, if nothing else. And so when people are like, I didn't like it because it was bricks in it. I'm like, okay, well, you are dumb for real.
I'm like, you're about to get hit with a brick.
I'm like, actually, I don't need to know your opinions ever again. Thank you.
Yeah, like I am one of those people that will hit the block button for the tiniest little reason.
Me too.
And I get real protective over Andor. I get real protective over Mon Mothma, but again, it's just because I'm like, there is always a difference between criticizing and being stupid and dumb.
Exactly.
And I fear that a lot of people don't realize that there is a line there, and it's like, don't cross it. Don't cross it unironically.
Like, please, I beg.
Like people that I trust and I know very well, I can make like, oh, well, like, you know, Andor had bricks and screws in it, or whatever. And I know that they know that I'm joking. And I know that they're joking with me. But anybody who does not have that level of, like, trust, where I'm like, I've had an intellectual discussion with you about this. I just want to be a silly little goose. It can't happen. Because some people would be like, yeah, actually, like, that was egregious. And I'm like,
oh,
you're
like, I was joking, but
I was like, I was joking, because I didn't want to actually get into a full-on intellectual discussion. But it looks like I got to jump back into the frickin' trench. and I don't want to. I was trying to avoid this. I was being funny.
Unfortunately, I have to start arguing with people on the internet again.
Yeah,
Terrible.
it's like, oh no. Why must I suffer? But like, I just genuinely adore Andor. And like, again, while I enjoyed the first arc, the Aldhani arc was what truly gripped me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this show is actually a masterpiece.
Yeah, I was like, okay, you get me. I get it now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm locked in.
I was like, well done, Mr. Tony Gilroy. You got me there, and well, now I'm in your walls. So congratulations on that development. You have no choice. I'm gonna sit here and cry and beg for Andor season 2.
Crying, you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah. Like, I really hope he shows up at Celebration. Just give him like a bottle of my tears.
How dare you?
Be like, how dare you accept this bottle of my tears, sir?
You're like, here's a picture of me crying as requested.
Yeah. Yeah, like it was very much a situation of, oh, don't worry. You're about to be a very, very happy man.
Literally, like, do not be concerned.
Which was very concerning.
I was already planning on crying immediately, so
yeah. I've got it planned. It's gonna be phenomenal. I have several boxes of tissues on standby. I might even just bring one to Celebration just to have there on the day of the panel, just because I might start crying like an insane person. Which, I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons why the universe decided I wasn't going to be allowed to have a ticket for the Celebration stage, because I would be hysterically wailing the whole time. Please. But I still live. I'm just one of those Delulu people that's like, don't worry, I'll figure out a way to get onto the Celebration, like into the Celebration stage for that one.
That's so real, honestly. And that's manifestation.
It's just, we all need to be a little bit Delulu sometimes.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, they should invite you to the Sunrise on the Reaping premiere. I live in Delulu over that.
Especially if Kieran Culkin is going to be in it. Like, I'm going to be there. Kieran
Culkin, Caesar Flickerman. Yeah.
I shouldn't. I can't even talk about it. Don't ask me my thoughts on Kieran Culkin, Caesar Flickerman for like at least a week.
Setting a timer now. For a week from I don't even know how long that would be.
With that.
That was just the most insane freaking news to click onto. I was like,
I gotta text it's like Kieran Culkin, Caesar Flickerman, and I was like, what? And then because I thought it was just like a joke or somebody like sending me an insane fan cast, and then I saw that it was like a actual rumor, and I was like,
Oh, okay. All right.
Lionsgate isn't my personal business. It's my personal affairs.
Okay, Lionsgate, it's your movie, and I'm gonna watch it anyways.
Like, I think Kieran Culkin could play any role ever, so
that's true. Kieran Culkin as Maisley Donner.
And he could do it.
He could do it. That scene with Roman and Shiv where they're just fighting each other.
I was literally
that's just Maisley and
Roman Roy would have killed himself after one conversation with Maisley Donner. He would not have been able to handle that.
It's just a reenactment of that one scene, and it's Maisley and Drusilla just slapping each other. Plutarch sat there recording the whole thing. Like, this is going to be great. Sponsors are going to be like, can she fight though? I'm going to show them this video. Is there anything? Oh, yeah. Why specifically? I mean, I feel like we already know because it's just that good. Why specifically did you want to talk about the Aldhani arc?
Yeah, I mean, it's all as we talked about, and it being like an earlier arc in the series being one that like really hooks you. I just think it's so good. I think it really is like the sort of like bringing together all these different rebels who have all these different like things that drew them to the cause, and like how it affects Cassian's perception of the rebellion going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a thing that is like very specific to this arc. I think that the planet of Aldhani in general and like the Aldhani people is a super interesting facet of the story. And I think that is another reason why this one's my favorite. And also just like the Eye as a specific episode is so good. The way it like combines the heist with the like emotional stakes of the episode, I think is just like a really, really good episode and my favorite episode of the show. That also is like the payoff to the 2 episodes that come before it that like make this arc really, really solid.
Oh yeah. I feel like Cassian would not have been the man that we see even in the Narkina 5 arc if not for, you know, what he experienced in the Aldhani arc.
Exactly.
So we love to see it. We love to see Cassian Andor character development.
So true.
He's on the journey to where he is in Rogue One, but he still has a long way to go, and it's just going to be so much fun and just brilliant to watch. It's going to make it even more tragic rewatching Rogue One.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to be able to handle that.
It's going to be like I'm going to finish the last episode of season 2 and just watch Rogue One immediately after it.
Literally, I'm like, anyway,
I'll
pressing
be
play on
the
Rogue
floor.
One.
It's like, now it's time. It is time for multiplying the pain. Yeah. We're gonna have a whole new Star Wars pain scale. It's gonna be fantastic.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
That's what I love about Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah. When we were all out like, oh, we would love a Cassian Andor show. We got what we asked for.
I know, I'm like, we did not think this through, guys.
No. Fandoms never do. We never like to think.
Yeah, we're always just like, make a show about this character, and then I'm like, wait, I just remembered that character has suffered more than any other man.
Yeah. Who suffered more, Cassian Andor or Jesus?
Please, it's a really hard call.
Who suffered more, Hamish Abernathy or Jesus?
Who suffered more, Hamish Abernathy or Cassian Andor? Like gun to my head, I don't know if I could answer.
So real. Gun to my head, I say pull the trigger. Yeah. What are you most looking forward to in Andor season 2?
Well, not to be like extremely on brand, but like it would be so great if Bail Organa was
so real.
Listen, so I said Bail and Bray Organa and Kenobi for like months leading up to that show, and everybody laughed, and then they were there, so I'm doing it again. So it actually makes even more sense for them to be here. So I'm like, I'm so convinced Bail Organa is going to be there. I'm like, we can't be hanging out on Yavin 4 and not show me Bail Organa. So,
but also, we're going to be in the time period of the Leia Princess of Alderaan dinner party scene.
Please, they should
favorite Star Wars scene. Please. For me, like, I'll be like, this is the greatest thing ever. I love watching my favorite scenes, like things that happen in a book, play out on screen.
It's so fun.
Because I'm like, now I could just watch it on repeat. And it's like, sure, they made this professionally in a film or a TV show or whatever, but this is for me. And I just have that little clip. And then people are like, what makes you happy? And I just show it to them. And they're like, huh, okay.
No, literally.
I feel as though my favorite scene from Sunrise on the Reaping will definitely end up in the movie. If it doesn't, I'm going to be like, what? Can't give me a little bit of joy in the middle of all of this pain? Give me the milk scene. Coriolanus Snow, one of those got milk ads. Hear me out. That is such a dated reference. Oh my god. That I should not be permitted to speak. Who is your favorite original character from Andor?
I feel like I've got to go with Vel. I just love her
So
so
real.
much. And very relevant to the Aldhani arc, obviously, but I'm like literally obsessed with her. And she was the one that like every new piece of information we learned about her, I was like, oh,
So
they got me
real.
with this one. Like I'm literally obsessed with her. And also like, let's go lesbians.
So real. Happy Pride Month, Velsartha. I know it's April, but
like,
Pride Month should be all year round.
Yeah, exactly.
Who is your least favorite Andor original character?
God, that's so difficult. Because I think they're all great. Well, I don't know. I think Cyril Karn is an interesting character who I wish would die. I think he's a very interesting character. Like, this is not me saying that's a bad character, but I also am like, he is so annoying and I need him gone.
He is the worst of all of us.
Yeah, like
is what Emily and I agreed when we were talking about Cyril.
Yeah,
he is.
For Emily to be talking about.
There is a lot about Cyril Karn that's just like, this is too relatable, and I need him dead for that.
He's just so, I'm like, girl, there are real problems in the world. Shut up.
He's just obsessed with Cassian Andor, and aren't we all? We're all tuning in for Andor.
That's his redeeming quality.
Yeah. I would give anything for that little Cassian Andor hologram. And what is your favorite thing about Mon Mothma, Mother?
How do I even choose?
So real.
She is literally perfect to me. I think
so real.
Well, something that actually I was thinking about during these episodes that is sort of a thing about her, sort of a thing about like her narrative in Andor is just like, I think it's very interesting to have a character like her who like we see that she has to sort of sacrifice her relationship with her daughter and with like people that she loves for the sake of the rebellion, and like the way that she sort of like weighs those two things but never takes like she never devalues anything in her life. And like I think she really like understands the weight of the sacrifices she's making and the choices she's making in a very different way than a lot of other characters do, because of like that she is coming from a place more like on the inside, like she is a person with status and who is known in the galaxy and all of these things. And I think that she like has this really strong awareness of like the choices that she's making, and like even is aware of like her own hesitance in making those decisions. And it's sort of like a thing that makes her like an imperfect character, but like a very real and authentic character that feels like a real person and not like a generic like cutout of a character. I think that she is like feels like a real human would feel in the situations that she finds herself in, which I'm obsessed with.
Agreed. I love her. I love everyone's answers to that question.
So true.
I'm so glad I don't let anyone so glad I don't let anyone get away with not answering it. Is there anything else we wanted to say about Andor?
Watch Andor, rewatch Andor if you've watched it already, or watch it for the first time. You have time. It's so like I'm literally probably gonna rewatch it again.
So real.
Before the second season starts, because it's just like it's so good. Like it's just good television.
Yeah. And I think you're with me on this one. After you've done that, read Sunrise on the Reaping.
Period. Yes.
Give our girl, Hamish Abernathy, all of the love that he will not accept. Even though he deserves it.
I love him so much.
He is so precious to me, and I love him.
So true.
Another fine example of fandoms being like, we really love the story of this character, and the creator being like, fucking bet And then they're like, have some trauma. And it's like, oh.
And I'm like, thanks. I already was sad about him every day of my life. So
yeah.
So I didn't need more.
Yeah. But now we have an almost 60-year-old man trauma dumping on a 16-year-old.
Likely thing for that loser to be doing.
So real. So real. Thank you so much, Claire, for joining the chat today. Plug your stuff.
Yeah. What stuff do I have? Well, on the subject, I have a Hunger Games podcast.
So real.
It's called Tales of Panem. You can find it by searching Tales of Panem podcast or following at Tales of Panem on Instagram or Twitter or TikTok. I am literally doing my Sunrise on the Reaping coverage right now, so if you need to lock in on that after Andor. And yeah, I'm also just on Twitter and TikTok at CMayLewis. I sometimes talk about Star Wars. I will probably talk about Star Wars more once Andor is coming out again. So
so real. Andor is the Winter Soldier trigger show for
literally. I'm like, okay, I'm back.
Yeah. Perfect. And for me, as always, you can find me at Mothma Updates and Bejeweled Mothma on most social media. I still have my Mon Mothma panel at Star Wars Celebration, which is, people are saying they're going to show up, which is pretty nice. It's on Friday, the 18th of April at 4 p.m. on the fan stage. The app updated, so now you can see where the fan stage is on your little phone, on your little device. For anybody who is not going to make it to Japan because it's a long fucking way away, it's going to be recorded, posted on YouTube. So yeah. One more time, thank you so much, Claire. It means a lot. And I hope that Andor season 2 is enjoyable. I hope it's less traumatic it's not going to be less traumatic, but I hope it's slightly less traumatic than Sunrise on the Reaping was.
So true. I think I'll be slightly more mentally stable about Andor, simply because Andor does not have Haymitch Abernathy in it, so like I think I can hold it together.
Yeah. So real. Thank you, and may the Force be with you.